The Lin Chia crucified on the cross heard this voice and his spirit shook. This voice was all too familiar to him. It was clearly his own voice, but compared to his current self, it seemed deeper and hoarser. His future self had actually detected Uriel's prying and actively broke through the time barrier. Lin Chia struggled to lift his head, but under the suppression of the mysterious force, he still couldn't see the full picture above his head, only glimpsing a corner with his peripheral vision. On the other end of the river of time, there seemed to be a simple courtyard. Lin Chia could see a maple tree in the corner, a pond with koi fish and a half-finished game of Go on a stone table. And then, there was a figure standing under the maple tree with hands behind his back. Due to the angle, Lin Chia couldn't see the person clearly, but judging from the voice, it was indeed himself. Hell. The figure narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. I see. Above the valley, Uriel spread his broken wings, and the crimson eye in the shattered socket began to writhe frantically. Seemingly aware that something was wrong, that eyeball quickly manipulated Uriel's corpse, trying to withdraw the domain covering the entire valley. The river of time flowing above Lin Chia and Qingyu also began to gradually fade. Just then, a cold snort came from the other side of the river of time. Now that this divine ruins has opened, whether it can be withdrawn is no longer up to you. Under the maple tree, the figure with hands behind his back lightly tapped the ground, and an invisible ripple spread out, passing through the river of time, directly expanding rapidly from above Lin Chia's head, forcibly supporting the fading seraph domain. Even the fading river of time solidified again. The laughter coming from those dense evil mouths on Uriel's face abruptly stopped. The red insects writhed frantically, revealing fear. Uriel had lost control of this divine ruins. Lin Chia, bound to the Black Cross, witnessed Uriel's divine ruins being countered. Suddenly he keenly sensed a gaze falling on him from above. Is it him? Is he looking at me from the future? Above Lin Chia, apart from the river of time, there was nothing else. The only one who could look at him was his future self. The way his future self had just countered the divine ruins left him extremely shocked. Although he didn't know what realm his future self had reached, since he could easily cross time and control Uriel's corpse, he should be at least at the divine realm. However, he himself didn't seem to have this ability to counter others' divine ruins. Could it be a new ability extracted from other patients later? If he could lift his head, Lin Chia would definitely look back to see what he looked like in the future. Just as Lin Chia was hesitating whether to speak and communicate with his future self across space, the figure standing under the maple tree narrowed his eyes, bursting with murderous intent. He pulled out a snow-white long blade from nowhere and slashed it through the air toward the other side of the river of time. Lin Chia recognized that blade, white slash, all too familiar to him. But what he never expected was that the target of this slash from that figure was actually himself. A snow-white blade light broke through space, crossed the time barrier and slashed straight toward his forehead. The chilling light appeared before Lin Chia's eyes, almost stopping his heart. He wants to kill me. My future self wants to kill me. Lin Chia's pupils suddenly contracted. At this moment his mind went blank and he even forgot to sink his consciousness into the hospital to carry Sun Wukong's soul. Not just him, even Qingyu, locked on another cross, had his expression drastically change when he saw this. Just as the blade light was about to pierce Lin Chia's forehead and shatter his head, a roaring boom echoed in the sky. A black scalpel pierced through space and shattered that blade light in midair. After colliding with the blade light, the black scalpel flew back into the river of time above Lin Chia's head and disappeared. The figure under the maple tree frowned and turned to look in another direction. Lin Chia stared blankly at the void before him, his back completely soaked with cold sweat. After a moment he came to his senses and looked in the direction from which the scalpel had come. Finally his gaze fell on the river of time above another cross. That was above Qingyu's head. Misty fog surged from the other end of the river of time, and a figure wearing a black robe with a hood stood silently in the mist, like a specter. He slightly raised his head and from under the black hood, a face both familiar and strange to Lin Chia appeared. Qingyu. He would never forget Qingyu's face, but his demeanor was completely different from the Qingyu that Lin Chia knew. That pale face no longer showed any shyness. He wasn't wearing glasses and a pair of eyes rolling with gray intent were coldly overlooking everything below. There was a knife scar on his temple, and his entire aura was indescribably cold and stern. At his feet, fragments of the time barrier also floated. That was Qingyu from the future. Lin Qia's mind was in turmoil. Like Lin Qia's future self, the future Qingyu had also sensed Uriel's prying and broken through the time barrier to intervene in the real world. How did he do that? The future Qingyu glanced at Lin Qia nailed to the cross, and finally his gaze fell on the figure in the river of time above his head. Lin Qia, are you trying to commit suicide? The black-robed Qingyu frowned and said in a deep voice. So it's you. Under the maple tree, the figure with hands behind his back paused upon seeing the future Qingyu. What I do, what does it have to do with you? Hearing this conversation, both Lin Qia and Qingyu nailed to the crosses were stunned. Ashes danced wildly in the whimpering wind, and the air suddenly fell into dead silence. I didn't expect that when we meet again it would be in this form. Qingyu glanced at Uriel flying in the air. It seems I should properly thank Nicholas. For some unknown reason, the moment Qingyu's gaze fell on it, the red eyeball writhing in Uriel's pupil suddenly froze. A strange fear made these small insects restless. You didn't expect it either? The figure under the maple tree spoke coldly. In this world, things that can exceed your expectations should no longer exist, right? Is this another trap you've set? What is your purpose? In the chaotic mist, Qingyu's gray eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, so what? Even if you rack your brains trying to break out of this situation, aren't you still trapped in my game? Hearing these words, the figure under the maple tree fell silent. His hands, previously behind his back, slowly lowered, and streaks of faint light flickered from his palms. He stared at the future Qingyu and spoke grimly. Do you think that across the river of time I cannot kill you? Others perhaps couldn't, but for you, Lin Qia, nothing is impossible. You've always been this way. Future Qingyu calmly replied. Striking across the river of time isn't good for either of us. I'm not here to fight with you. I just want to remind you of one thing. What? That figure asked calmly. Future Qingyu stared at him and spoke deliberately. Our chess game isn't over yet. As the words fell, those eyes swirling with gray intent slowly closed, saying nothing more. At the other end of the two rivers of time, two figures stared at each other, briefly falling into silence. The figure under the maple tree narrowed his eyes as if deep in thought. His peripheral vision seemed to notice something and he slightly turned his head to look. A moment later, that figure snorted coldly and turned to walk toward the depths of the courtyard. With a wave of his hand, the unknown domain supporting these two rivers of time gradually receded and faded. His voice drifted over. You should find it more convenient than me to deal with the endgame here. As the river of time above Lin Qia's head dissipated, that figure vanished without a trace. The connection between present and future was completely severed, leaving only endless ashes swirling above his head, falling and scattering over him and Qingyu. After being locked on the cross, Sky Poet could no longer be used. The two figures were completely exposed in the ashes. In just a few minutes, their bodies were covered with a thin layer of gray gauze. An itching sensation arose from the surface of Lin Qia's skin, as if something was about to burrow out from his flesh. His eyes were extremely red. Lin Qia knew what would happen when these ashes fell on his body. Qingyu's hand had merely touched a piece of ash and ended up in that state. Judging by the amount of ash now in contact with his body, he feared that in a few minutes he would end up like those writhing flesh balls in the valley. Seeing that the figure who had countered its divine ruins had left, the red insects in Uriel's eye sockets gradually calmed down. Just as it was about to continue the judgment, its form suddenly froze in place. The second river of time had not disappeared with the withdrawal of its divine ruins. Misty fog surged above the second cross. Future Qingyu stood calmly in the mist, staring at the vanished river of time above the first cross, his indifferent eyes showing no emotional fluctuation. A moment later he glanced coldly at the broken six-winged seraph and the crazily surging waves of flesh balls below, then lowered his head to put on a black hood, concealing his entire face in darkness, and turned to walk into the mist. As his figure gradually faded, he gently raised his right hand and clenched it in mid-air. Extinguish. A simple syllable transmitted from above the cross. The next moment, the writhing red insects in Uriel's eye sockets suddenly all froze. Bang! With a muffled explosion, those insects forming the eyeball burst in succession like firecrackers. Viscous blood splattered out, flowing down Uriel's eye sockets. After this eyeball disappeared, Uriel's form fell powerlessly into the meteor crater like a puppet without control, raising billowing dust and sand. Without Uriel's power supporting them, the crosses behind Lin Chia and Enkinji shattered inch by inch. Their forms fell from the sky, crashing toward the valley below like meteors. Bang, bang, bang. Consecutive explosion sounds emanated from the valley. Those bloated, distorted flesh balls all burst open. Amid countless agonized screams, a crimson tide rapidly spread throughout the valley. The crimson tide expanded rapidly in Lin Chia's eyes. Enduring the itching on his body, he summoned Somersault Cloud, caught the similarly falling Enkinji with a flip, and the two glided over the bloody, foul-smelling valley, landing on the waist of a mountain peak at the edge. As soon as their feet touched the ground, intense pain transmitted from all over their bodies. Lin Chia stumbled and fell to the ground. His skin surface was bright red all over. Countless red insects frantically broke out from his body, falling onto the ground and bursting open in succession. These were all insects that had entered his body with the ashes. These dense explosion sounds continued for about half a minute before the two men's skin gradually recovered from bright red to normal. The previous itching sensation had completely disappeared, leaving only a mess of insect corpses and blood flowing down the mountainside. After all the insects in his body had died, Lin Chia took a deep breath and weakly leaned against a huge rock, slowly sitting down. By now, the second river of time in the sky had disappeared. The figure wearing the black robe and hood had returned to the other end of time. Looking at the valley that had fallen into deathly silence, Lin Chia couldn't help feeling relieved at their narrow escape. Vengeful ghost pursuit, angel's judgment, plus the sky full of ashes entering their bodies. If not for the intervention of those two figures from the future, they would have had almost no chance of survival. But the doubts in his heart were also unprecedentedly intense. Why did my future self want to kill me? What did the conversation between my future self and future Enkinji mean? Lin Chia turned his head to look at Enkinji sitting on another boulder. The latter happened to look up at him. Their gazes met in the air and the atmosphere suddenly fell silent. After a long while, Lin Chia finally spoke first. "Qingyu? I don't know what they were talking about." Enkinji shook his head before Lin Chia could ask. "I'm not interested in what will happen in the future. I only know that I will always be myself." Lin Chia was stunned. A moment later, he smiled helplessly and cast aside the chaotic thoughts in his mind. It was still unknown how far into the future those two figures had come from, and it was just a brief conversation. If he were to doubt his brother based solely on this fragmented information, he would be overly suspicious. Regardless of the future, Lin Chia only believed what he saw in the present. "I've recovered pretty much. How about you?" Enkinji moved with faltering steps toward Lin Chia. The blood holes on his body where the insects had emerged were already regenerating at super speed. Lin Chia looked at the dense blood holes on his own body. Although they hadn't healed, the bleeding had stopped. He slowly stood up. "I'm fine. Saving people is more urgent now." Lin Chia, having eaten the peach of immortality and received the baptism of faith, wouldn't be in mortal danger even with a few small holes in his flesh. Even if he were stabbed through with a knife, as long as his vital organs remained unharmed, he would be fine. Lin Chia's gaze swept across the entire desolate valley, finally settling on the direction of the depths of hell. Before Future and Qingyu left, his mid-air grip directly eliminated all life forms contaminated by Cthulhu's power near the valley, and Lin Chia's mental perception returned accordingly. He scanned the surroundings, confirming there were no other vengeful spirits or seraphim corpses present, then immediately set off with Qingyu toward the depths of hell. Standing at the peak looking into the distance, Lin Chia could see a blood-like radiance bursting forth from between the mountains not far away. Countless demons with black wings were circling around that red light in the sky. If Lin Chia wasn't mistaken, that was the deepest part of hell. Lin Chia turned his head, about to say something to Qingyu beside him, but saw that the latter was rushing forward while staring blankly at the ground flashing beneath his feet as if lost in thought. The moment he saw his expression, Lin Chia's heart trembled slightly. This expression was all too familiar to Lin Chia. He had worn the same look when he was on the Pamir plow. Anxiety, confusion, self-doubt. If not for the battle at the monument, he would probably still be trapped in these negative emotions. Lin Chia recalled his recent conversation with Qingyu, and his gaze grew complicated. It seemed that although Qingyu claimed to have no interest in the future, deep down he was constantly questioning himself and worrying about the direction of his future path. Chia. Just then Qingyu came back to his senses and turned to look at Lin Chia. Just now, did you see what my future self looked like? Lin Chia was stunned. My head was held down by some mysterious force, so I could only see a corner of him. From your angle, you should have been able to see the whole picture, right? It seemed that, like him, Qingyu could only see the other's future appearance due to their angles, but not the future above their own heads. Yes, Lin Chia nodded. What did he look like? In Lin Chia's mind, the image of that figure in a black robe with a hood, standing in the center of rolling mist, reappeared. Whether looking at Lin Chia or at Qingyu himself, his gaze carried not the slightest emotion, cold and indifferent. Looking at Qingyu's confused eyes, Lin Chia hesitated for a moment, then smiled lightly and said, "You were standing in the mist wearing a deep red cloak. The edges of the cloak were a bit tattered, as if you'd just been through a battle. You weren't wearing glasses, and except for your demeanor being a bit more profound than now, there didn't seem to be much change." Lin Chia lied. If the current Qingyu knew the truth, the confusion and self-doubt in his heart would only worsen, just like Lin Chia himself had once fallen into a dead end. He described the future Qingyu as similar to his current self, just to ease his questioning about his future path and stabilize his state of mind. No change. Hearing these words, the confusion in Qingyu's eyes noticeably dissipated. He nodded thoughtfully. That's good. What about me? Lin Chia continued along this topic. From your perspective, what does my future self look like? Lin Chia couldn't help but be curious about what his future self would become. Qingyu opened his mouth, paused for a moment, then said, "You were in a courtyard with flowers, trees and a pond. You were standing under a maple tree, also wearing a deep red cloak. You looked very spirited and your strength was far greater than it is now." Lin Chia briefly imagined his future self and nodded slightly. It seemed his future self was doing quite well. With the mental perception of mortal divine domain, it wasn't difficult for the two to advance while avoiding the demons in the sky. As time passed, they drew closer to that piercing red light. "We're approaching the depths of hell," Lin Chia said solemnly. "Going further, the demons will be too densely packed for us to get around. If the exploration ship entered hell through a gap, then its wreckage should be not far from that gap. When Zhuaigu escaped after the ship was attacked with demons so densely packed, he wouldn't have tried to force his way out, but would have chosen a relatively safe visual blind spot to hide, perhaps a deep crevice or a cave or a ravine." Qingyu pushed up his glasses and analyzed calmly. Also, in Jiang Er's last call she mentioned lava flowing in the water, so there must be a broken mountain with lava nearby. "I understand." Lin Chia peered out from behind a huge rock on a mountain peak, his gaze sweeping the surroundings, quickly locking onto a range of low mountains not far away. From the mouths of several mountains, red lava continuously flowed out, following the broken mountainside into the waters at the foot of the mountain, producing bursts of white mist. "It should be there." The two quickly set off toward the mountain range. Whenever demons flew overhead, they would slip into the void and soon arrived at the outskirts of the mountains. Lin Chia closed his eyes and carefully sensed for a moment. "Found it." He opened his eyes, which flashed with brilliance, and looked toward the middle of one of the mountains. "It's Zhuaigu. He's hiding in a cave." In the silent cave, a void rift opened out of nowhere, and two figures in deep red cloaks quickly emerged. "Zhuaigu." Lin Chia's pupils suddenly contracted when he saw Shen Qingzhu leaning against the wall, motionless. Shen Qingzhu's eyes were closed, his face extremely pale, with a pool of blood spreading beneath him, soaking half the cave floor. Lin Chia quickly ran forward and checked Shen Qingzhu's breathing, his expression immediately turning grim. He stared blankly at the cold corpse before him, frozen in place. Qingyu observed Shen Qingzhu slumped on the ground, a flash of grief passing through his eyes. After confirming there was no trace of life left in his body, Qingyu's fists clenched uncontrollably. "How is he?" Lin Chia stiffly turned his head, a glimmer of hope flashing in his eyes as he looked at Qingyu. He hoped he had sensed wrong, hoped Nchinyu would give him a different answer. Bitterness welled up in Nchinyu's eyes as he gently shook his head. We're too late. The entire cave fell into dead silence, with only the howling cold wind outside the cave resonating through the thick smell of blood. A flash of black light passed through Shin Qingzhu's chest amid the silence. A faint Dao halo emanated from his body, and a profound, supreme aura filled the cave. Lin Chia and Nchinyu both froze, instinctively stepping back. Thump. Thump. In the quiet cave, heavy heartbeats sounded again. A Dao halo spread from Shin Qingzhu's chest throughout his entire body. His nearly dried-up blood began to flow again, and his severed, cold hand started to regenerate at a visible speed. His life force was reviving. What's happening? Lin Chia asked in confusion, his eyes still red. That jade pendant is reconstructing Zhuaiji's body, and Qinyu's eyes brightened. He's coming back to life. As the Dao halo surged, Shin Qingzhu's body finally became whole again. His pale skin regained its color, and his tightly closed eyelashes trembled slightly before his eyes slowly opened. Shin Qingzhu, back from the dead, stared blankly at the two people before him for a moment before coming to his senses. It's you too. Zhuaiji. Lin Chia quickly ran forward, grabbed Shin Qingzhu's shoulders, and rapidly scanned his body with his mental power. After confirming there were no more wounds, his face filled with excitement and joy. Are you okay? Shin Qingzhu looked down at his healed palm in confusion. You just died, and Qingyu added. I confirmed it. There shouldn't have been any life force left in your body. Shin Qingzhu seemed to remember something and pulled out a black jade pendant from his pocket, holding it in his palm with a complex expression. Before leaving the heavenly palace, Fatty gave me a jade pendant, saying it could bring people back from death. Thanks to this thing, I'm alive again. A treasure that can resurrect the dead? Lin Chia asked, puzzled. When did he get something like that? I don't know. Shin Qingzhu looked at the pendant with a bitter smile. It seems I owe that little fatty another life. Shin Qingzhu stood up and briefly moved his body. All his injuries had disappeared, and he was no different from before being wounded, moving with ease. Zhuai, what happened after we left? Lin Chia asked. Shin Qingzhu was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply. After you left, the exploration ship just drifted with the waves. Later I heard 2 loud booms from the sky, and then the ocean currents changed. By the time I realized what was happening, the ship had already entered a narrow waterway. I was planning to find a place to turn the ship around and get out, but suddenly a giant python emerged from the blood-colored water, smashed the ship's keel and bit through my body. Carried me through the mountains. After a desperate battle, I killed the giant python, but my injuries were too severe. Plus, there were those black-winged monsters circling in the sky, so I could only find a cave to hide temporarily. After I leaned against this wall, I gradually lost consciousness. When I woke up, I saw you too. So he did come here through the gap in hell. Lin Chia nodded. Zhuai, where is the shipwreck? Qingyu asked seriously. Shin Qingzhu thought for a moment, then pointed in a direction. The python carried me through many mountains, so I don't remember the exact location, but it's roughly in that direction, probably about 10 kilometers away. And the gap? Also in that area. Lin Chia nodded. Good, then we'll go rescue Jiang Air and leave directly through the gap. Lin Chia stood at the edge of the cave and looked outside. There are many demons outside. I'll go in front, Zhuai. Lin Chia paused. Zhuaiji will be in the middle and Qingyu will guard the rear. If you notice anything, let me know immediately. For this single-file formation, the person at the front faces the greatest risk, followed by the person at the rear. The middle position is the safest. Previously, Shin Qingzhu had always been at the rear of the team, but now the situation was special. And Qingyu was only present as a clone, so if something happened to him while guarding the rear, his actual life wouldn't be in danger, making him the most suitable choice for the position. Comparatively, Shin Qingzhu was more vulnerable to injury, so having him walk in the middle was reasonable. Lin Chia knew this arrangement might increase Shin Qingzhu's sense of helplessness, but now was not the time to worry about such things. He had just witnessed Shin Qingzhu's death with his own eyes. As the team leader, he couldn't let Shin Qingzhu take risks again. He didn't want to experience the feeling of losing a teammate a second time. Hearing Lin Chia's arrangement, Shin Qingzhu paused slightly, then silently nodded and obediently followed the order, walking in the middle, closely following Lin Chia out of the cave. Have you noticed that the falling ash seems to have decreased? And Qingyu observed the sky through the air barrier Shen Qingzhu had created, thoughtfully remarking. Maybe it's coming to an end. After all, the ash can't be endless. Otherwise, if it fell like this everywhere, the entire Earth would probably be overrun. That's true. Since the three of them made a larger target, Lin Chia moved more cautiously this time. It took them nearly half an hour to cover half the distance. However, as they went deeper, the mysterious red glowing area in the depths of hell gradually came into their view. Through the gaps between the mountains, the three looked toward the core area and saw a blood pool the size of a lake lying quietly among the surrounding mountains. The ash falling into the blood pool was quickly swallowed as if it had never existed. In the center of the blood pool, a black crystal-like fragment was floating. Countless blood filaments extended from the pool, clinging to the surface of the black crystal, writhing like blood vessels. Hundreds and thousands of demons circled above the blood pool, like a dark cloud. The moment Shen Qingzhu and An Qingyu saw the black crystal, their gaze seemed to be drawn to it, unable to look away. An unprecedented desire welled up in their hearts. A pair of hands simultaneously slapped the backs of their necks, and they snapped back to reality as if waking from a dream. Without realizing it, their backs were already soaked with cold sweat. What is that thing? And Qingyu deliberately fixed his gaze on the edge of the black crystal, observing it with his peripheral vision. That is the origin. Lin Chia stared at the black crystal and slowly said, the origin of hell. Hell origin. When they heard these 4 words, Shen Qingzhu and An Qingyu were both stunned. Although they had long heard about the wonders of the origin, this was the first time they had seen it with their own eyes, and the first time they had felt the irresistible allure of the origin to humans. On the boat coming here, they had heard Michael mention that once a fallen angel had cut off a corner of the heaven origin, contaminating it into the hell origin, using it as the foundation for hell. So it was that black crystal above the blood pool? I almost got entranced. Seven Knight, why aren't you affected? And Qingyu asked curiously, seeing that Lin Chia was completely unmoved by the hell origin. My physique is rather special. Lin Chia calmly explained that his body, already modified by the night origin, naturally blocked the influence of any other form of origin and would not be tempted. And Qingyu and Shen Qingzhu exchanged glances. Freak. As they were talking, plump flesh balls came tumbling awkwardly from the land across the blood pool. Their sharp, eerie laughter overlapped as they lined up and entered the blood pool one after another. Their bodies sank like heavy stones, one after another, disappearing into the bottom of the pool. What are they doing? Committing suicide? Shen Qingzhu asked, puzzled by the scene. I don't know, Lin Chia pondered thoughtfully. However, although these flesh balls usually move in a frenzied, disorderly manner, they are unusually unified in entering the blood pool, as if someone behind the scenes is controlling them to do so. And Qingyu looked up at the gradually disappearing ashes in the sky and murmured, could this blood pool be their true target? Let's go while all the demons' attention is elsewhere, we need to hurry. Lin Chia sensed the surrounding situation and quickly selected a safe path, leading the two of them over several mountain peaks. Shh. A faint electrical sound came from the Bluetooth speaker at An Qingyu's waist. An Qingyu was startled and looked up at the sky. At some point the falling ashes had disappeared, and the hideous crack in the sky was gradually healing like a wound. The ash snow that had polluted both heaven and hell had finally stopped. An Qingyu quickly held the Bluetooth speaker in his hand and spoke in a low voice. Jiang Er? Can you hear me? Shh. I can hear you, the signal is back. Jiang Er's delighted voice came through the speaker, and An Qingyu finally breathed a sigh of relief. I found the sunken ship and Jiang Er's location. Lin Chia's eyes focused, quickly locking onto one of the mountains with flowing water. The three arrived at the foot of the mountain, looking down at the rushing water below. Lin Chia pointed to a spot, and invisible threads flew out from An Qingyu's sleeve into the water. Fush. Moments later, as An Qingyu flicked his wrist, a black coffin flew out of the water current, pulled by the threads to land beside him. An Qingyu rubbed the coffin lid, confirming there were no cracks or damage, then spoke again. Jiang Er, are you all right? I'm fine. A girl in a white dress flew out of the coffin, floating in midair, and smiled. The coffin you made for me is too solid, even lava couldn't corrode it. Seeing the girl before him, the remaining gloom and confusion in Nchinyu's eyes vanished. He smiled slightly and said, "Being solid alone isn't enough. After all, you're just a magnetic field and can't move your own coffin. Once there's no one to carry your coffin, it becomes your prison. This incident has been a wake-up call for me. When we get back, I'll try to modify it again and see if I can solve this problem." Boom, boom, boom. Consecutive howling sounds from the hell core nearby interrupted their conversation. Everyone turned to look and saw countless plump figures with black wings rising from the red light. Are those vengeful spirits? Upon seeing these black-winged figures flying into the sky, Lin Chia immediately thought of the flesh ball spirits that had sunk into the blood pool one after another. Although in appearance they had almost none of those disgusting, hideous flesh ball organs left, and looked more like demons, their rising and falling sinister laughter still revealed their true nature. In Lin Chia's original perception, those vengeful spirits had no level fluctuations, but now after growing black wings and changing their appearance, they had all uniformly become boundless level. As hundreds and thousands of vengeful demon spirits flew into the sky with sinister laughter, joining the circling demon ranks, those black figures formed a dark cloud, spreading across nearly half the area. Meanwhile, vengeful spirits continued to sink into the blood pool. Seeing this, Nchinyu seemed to understand something and his expression darkened. Are they using that blood pool to mass-produce demons? Hearing this, Lin Chia also realized what was happening and frowned deeply. Is this Odin's true intention for hiding in hell? What do you mean? Jiang Er asked, puzzled. Before Odin was exposed, he was still the king of the Asgardian gods, with the right to mobilize all Asgardian deities. Having a divine realm's power as his backup provided him with great benefits. But after the truth was revealed by our great Xiao Moral Heavenly Lord, he was forced to leave Asgard, losing the power of the divine realm. This means that openly, Odin now relies solely on his supreme god combat power, working alone for the Cthulhu gods on the moon, which puts him in a very passive position. Lin Chia continued his analysis gravely. Without the divine realm's support, he wanted to create his own force that wouldn't be inferior to a divine realm. So he set his sights on heaven and hell, these two divine realms abandoned countless ages ago. These two divine realms are extremely hidden and rarely visited by deities. Most importantly, they contain numerous corpses of angels and demons who died in battle countless ages ago. Odin must have communicated in some form with the Cthulhu gods, planning to use those ashes to control the corpses of angels and demons. However, before he was fully prepared, he encountered Michael, who came here with us. After being discovered by Michael, he had no choice but to lure Michael away himself, then prematurely release this ash snow. After contaminating the vengeful spirits, he would use the hell origin to enhance them, thus gaining a large number of cannon fodder below the divine level. Combined with the corpses of seraphim and fallen angels controlled by the ashes, he would obtain several high-level powers equivalent to major gods. This is no abandoned divine realm at all. This is clearly the embryonic form of a Cthulhu divine realm that Odin prepared for himself and the Cthulhu gods. Everyone's expressions immediately became solemn. Originally, when they saw the scene of vengeful souls transforming into demons, they hadn't made too many connections, but after Lin Chia's analysis, they became aware of the terrifying conspiracy behind these two lost divine kingdoms. What should we do then? Xin Qingzhu frowned as he spoke. And Qingyu pushed up his glasses and said, the most reliable method right now is to quickly return to Great Xia, inform the Heavenly Court about what's happening here, and have them use the Heavenly Court's origin power to directly destroy the Hell origin, completely strangling the embryonic form of the divine kingdom in its cradle. Odin deliberately led away Michael, but he doesn't know about our existence, so from his perspective, as long as he keeps Michael occupied, this divine kingdom won't be exposed. He wouldn't anticipate that someone would discover the secret of this place and notify the Great Xia Heavenly Court. That's right, Lin Chia nodded in agreement. This is the best method. The Heavenly Court gods could even wait before destroying this divine kingdom, instead hiding in the shadows until Odin delivers himself to their doorstep, then eliminate him on the spot. But there's one thing I still don't quite understand. And Qingyu lowered his head in contemplation. What is it? Creating the Earth's prototype of the Cthulhu pantheon must be quite important for the Cthulhu gods. Would they really dare to leave two divine realms so open? Aren't they afraid someone might accidentally wander in and discover the secrets here? But hasn't heaven already been sealed? Jiang Er asked. Heaven has indeed been sealed, but what about hell? And Qingyu said. Don't forget, Odin came in through a gap in hell. If he knew about the entrance, wouldn't others from other pantheons in the world know too? And look at Shuai, didn't he just drift in on a boat following the ocean currents? If the Cthulhu pantheon were exposed, it would inevitably lead to an all-out assault from every pantheon on Earth, so secrecy is paramount. Would those things on the moon allow such a loophole to exist? And Qingyu's series of questions left everyone present speechless. Lin Chia pondered for a long time, then looked up at the sky. In the sky, that crack continuously raining down ash had almost completely healed. He seemed to realize something and his expression changed. Not good. We need to get to the gap quickly. Without another word, he led everyone rapidly toward the gap location that Shin Qingzhu had pointed out. The group sped along the mountain gorge at an astonishing pace. After flying just a few kilometers, and Qingyu, who was at the back of the team, slightly changed his expression and turned to look behind. Something is watching us. Really? Jiang Er floated out from the coffin and looked around. But those demons haven't caught up with us, have they? It's not demons. Flying at the front of the team, Lin Chia spoke in a deep voice. It's hell. Hell. This hell is watching us. Lin Chia's gaze turned toward the peaks on both sides of the mountain gorge. At the same time, the ground beneath everyone's feet began to tremble slightly. The ash covering the ground and mountain surface like snow began to fall off in the tremors. The originally brown, crevice-filled earth had somehow become covered with enormous flesh nodules. From the size of fists to houses, these nodules grew like fruits from the ground, covering almost every corner of hell. Several of the flesh balls split open from the center, and large numbers of red insects formed crimson eyeballs that rotated rapidly. In an instant, dozens of differently sized crimson insect eyes appeared on both sides of the gorge, locking onto Lin Chia and the others flying above the water. The moment they saw these insect eyes, the others seemed to realize something, and their expressions changed dramatically. This hell has come alive. I should have realized it earlier, Lin Chia said with furrowed brows. Those ashes can contaminate living human bodies as well as dead things, including corpses. In this snowfall-like ash, what's most affected isn't the corpses of demons and angels or the vengeful spirits, but hell and heaven themselves. What the K-system gods wanted was never a fixed, rigid, and cumbersome divine realm. What they wanted was a living divine realm. Just by piling these ashes on hell and heaven, they could contaminate them into living entities controlled by the K-system gods. Only this way would this divine realm absolutely avoid detection by other divine realms. As Lin Chia spoke, he flew across the water and finally stopped at a cliff waterfall at the end of the water area. The cliff was several kilometers high, with roaring blood-colored water pouring down from above, making thunderous sounds. Water droplets splashed in all directions as Lin Chia's face grew extremely grim. Where's the gap? And Qingyu looked at Shin Qingzhu. It was right around here. Shin Qingzhu's expression was unprecedentedly serious. The exploration ship entered through this waterfall. We should have seen it on our way here. Did we miss it? Jiang Er asked. No, we didn't miss it. Lin Chia slowly shook his head. It healed itself. Lin Chia stretched out his hand, pointing to the deep red sky. Remember what I said? This divine realm has come alive under the contamination of the ashes. It's like a gigantic flesh ball, and we're now inside this flesh ball. Since it's a living entity, it has the ability to heal wounds. The crack in the sky where the ashes fell from has been self-healed. The gap from hell to the outside world wasn't large to begin with. To it, it's like a small wound on a thumb that can heal completely very quickly. Without the gap, how can we get out? Jiang Er's voice came through the Bluetooth speaker. Lin Chia and Qingyu both fell silent. Amid the roaring sound of the waterfall, Lin Chia spoke bitterly. We can't get out. Heaven had been completely sealed off when the ashes first fell, and hell's gap had quickly healed after being contaminated. Now heaven and hell had completely become living entities nurtured by the K-system gods, and all exit routes had been cut off. Now it was truly a case of no way to heaven, no door to hell. And Qingyu clenched his fists tightly, his face full of unwillingness. They had struggled so hard to pass through heaven and hell, had come this far, only to end up trapped here by the K-system gods. Moreover, after heaven and hell became living entities, they likely gained the ability to move freely, which meant these two divine realms might no longer be in the sea area where they had entered. Even if Michael escaped and returned, that sea area would already be empty. All routes out were completely sealed and no one could save them. They had completely fallen into this divine realm cultivation dish prepared by the K-system gods. Under Lin Chia's command, everyone first found a hidden cave in the cliff face behind the waterfall to take shelter. Due to the obstruction of the water flow, no ashes had drifted in here, and Lin Chia didn't sense the presence of any flesh nodules, so it should be a relatively safe place. There must be another way, and Qingyu took a deep breath and began to think seriously. Since there's no way out, can we create one ourselves? Not very likely. Lin Chia shook his head. The barrier of the divine realm isn't something that can be easily broken through, not even by gods, let alone by us. Moreover, this divine realm has become a living entity. Even if we open a gap, it will heal quickly. Then perhaps we could go back to heaven and look around? Heaven is so vast, what if there's a way out somewhere? Jiang Er suggested tentatively. We went through so much trouble to get from heaven through hell, it's not realistic to go back now. I think. While everyone was discussing methods of escape, Lin Chia pondered for a moment and quietly sank his consciousness into the god's mental hospital in his mind. Lin Chia, wearing a white coat, quickly walked out of the director's office. Chia, good morning. Li Yifei, who was sunbathing at the entrance, greeted him with a smile. Where is Yolanda? Lin Chia had no time for small talk and got straight to the point. He's alone on the rooftop of the hospital. On the rooftop? Doing what? I don't know. Since this old man left his ward, he just stands there every day, not eating or sleeping. Every time I get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and see him standing there in his white clothes, I get startled. Li Yifei couldn't help but complain. Lin Chia frowned. All right, I understand. He turned and quickly walked toward the stairs. These past 2 days he had been carrying out missions in the mist and hadn't checked on the god's mental hospital much. Although he was puzzled by Yolanda's behavior, now was not the time to dwell on such matters. Yolanda was the Lord of Heaven and also the one who destroyed hell. In this world, there should be no one who understands these two places better than him. To find a way out, asking him should be the most useful, right? Lin Chia rushed to the rooftop of the inpatient department, where he saw an old man clothed in white clouds, standing quietly by the railing, looking down at the hospital below, motionless like a stone statue. Lord Yolanda. Lin Chia called out, but the old man continued to gaze downward as if he hadn't heard. Lin Chia had to walk to his side and call again, Lord Yolanda? Yolanda behind the railing slowly turned his head. Those eyes full of compassion and mercy gazed into Lin Chia's eyes, and his gentle voice sounded. You've done well, child. After a brief moment of speechlessness, Lin Chia tried again. Lord Yolanda, both heaven and hell have been contaminated by the Cthulhu gods and turned into living entities. I'm now trapped in a cave by the hell waterfall with no way out. Do you know of any other way to escape? You've done well, child. Lord Yolanda, the situation is truly urgent. If you can't speak, could you at least give me a hint? You've done well, child. Can you understand what I'm saying? You've done well, child. That compassionate old face mechanically repeated the same sentence. Lin Chia clenched his fists and struck the railing beside him, his expression extremely grim. Given Yolanda's current condition, communication was impossible. Lin Chia's last hope had completely shattered amid the repeated, You've done well, child. Damn it. Just as Lin Chia was growing anxious, 2 figures slowly walked up the stairs. Lin Chia turned to look and saw an ancient ape wearing tattered Kasaya robes and a man in a gray cloak standing behind him. Monkey King? Gilgamesh. Seeing these 2 figures, Lin Chia was slightly startled. What are you doing here? We were about to fight, but we heard you banging on the railing and came up to see what was happening. Sun Wukong frowned. What's going on? Lin Chia stared at the 2 before him, a bitter expression crossing his face as he briefly explained what had happened. A sealed divine realm. Sun Wukong muttered to himself. After a moment of silence, he turned to look at Gilgamesh beside him. The king knows nothing of such matters. Gilgamesh shook his head and said flatly. All right. Lin Chia sighed and was about to leave when Sun Wukong suddenly spoke. Perhaps you could approach it from the origin. Hearing this, Lin Chia stopped and turned back with a puzzled look. Although I don't understand heaven and hell, nor do I know what these ashes you speak of are, I do know that a divine system's origin is the foundation that supports a divine realm and the central control. It's like the origin of the heavenly court. Once it shatters, the heavenly court itself will collapse. Sun Wukong recalled the scene of the heavenly venerable shattering the origin of the heavenly court, paused for a moment and continued. From your description, those ashes have only temporarily taken control of hell's ground and outer space, and probably haven't contaminated hell's origin. The origin is a mysterious thing. Once contaminated, it cannot maintain its original power, and it would be impossible to mass-produce demons as you described. If that's the case, if you can break either the origin of heaven or hell, the divine realm will crumble. No matter what those ashes have contaminated, they cannot prevent this from happening. Lin Chia's eyes gradually brightened. The origin of heaven had been taken to the moon by Yolande years ago and couldn't possibly be broken, but Lin Chia knew exactly where hell's origin was. If they could break it, not only would they find a way out, but this embryonic form of the Cthulhu divine realm would collapse as well. However, Sun Wukong spoke again, interrupting Lin Chia's joy. However, a divine system's origin is not so easily destroyed. As far as I know, only an origin can destroy another origin. I have an origin, Lin Chia immediately said, thinking of the night origin that Nyx had left him. What you have is a natural origin, not a divine system origin. Sun Wukong shook his head and said. I only know that a divine system origin can destroy another divine system origin, but whether a natural origin can do the same, I'm not sure. Lin Chia fell silent. I understand. Thank you, Monkey King. Lin Chia took a deep breath, bowed deeply to Sun Wukong, and then left the god's mental hospital. Whether the night origin could destroy hell's origin was indeed an unknown, but for Lin Chia and the others, this might be their only way out. If they couldn't think of any other way to leave, they would have to take this risk. Inside the cave, this method won't work either. After Ang Qingjiu rejected another proposal, the entire cave fell into silence. Could it be that we can only wait here to die? Shen Qingzhu frowned deeply and said in a low voice, if that's the case, we might as well charge out and fight those monsters to the death. At least before dying we could kill some more angels and demons, reducing the pressure on future Daxia. No, a voice came from the corner of the cave. Lin Chia, sitting to the side, slowly opened his eyes. At least for now we haven't reached that point yet. Lin Chia repeated what Sun Wukong had said, and a glimmer of hope gradually appeared in everyone's eyes. This method carries great risk. No one knows if my night origin can destroy the hell origin, but given our current situation, this is our only choice. I think it's feasible, said Shen Qingzhu. If we fail, at worst we'll perish together with those monsters. But if we succeed, not only can we leave, but we can also destroy this Q-system divine country, directly eliminating this threat to Earth. It's worth the gamble. And Qingjiu pondered seriously for a moment, then sighed. We have no other choice, we can only take this risk. I have no objections either, Jiang Er nodded. Seeing that no one had any objections, Lin Chia nodded solemnly. There are too many demons near the hell origin. We can't act rashly. We need to first find a way to create an opportunity to approach the origin. Amid the roaring sound of the waterfall, Lin Chia and the others sat in the cave, lowering their voices, seriously plotting something. The deepest part of hell. At the corner of a layered mountain peak, Lin Chia and the other three hid beneath a huge boulder. Black demons circled in the sky like dark clouds. A rough glance revealed at least 3,000 of them. At the edge of the blood pool, one demon after another with black wings soared into the sky, merging into the black clouds above. Kik-kik. Jijijiji. Hee. Continuous eerie laughter came from the edge of the blood pool. Countless flesh ball souls lined up less than a kilometer away from Lin Chia and the others, sinking into the blood pool. Lin Chia and his team's current position was the closest they could get to the hell origin without being discovered by the circling demons. Lin Chia stared at the black crystal floating in the blood pool for a moment, then turned to look at the others behind him. If the plan fails, this might be our last battle. Lin Chia hesitated for a moment before speaking. Are you really ready? And Qingjiu, Jiang Er and Shin Qingzhu exchanged glances and smiled slightly. There's nothing to prepare for. Rather, from the moment we joined Night Curtain, we've been waiting for this day. Shin Qingzhu spoke calmly. Since we dared to become members of the special squad, we must have this level of resolve. Hearing these words, Lin Chia smiled helplessly. Then I'll begin. Lin Chia extended his hand and gently pressed on the ground beneath his feet. Several brilliant magic arrays lit up in succession. Whoosh! A red dragon shadow flapped its wings and flew into the sky first, followed immediately by a snow-white dragon shadow. The former was the hospital attendant, the flame-veined earth dragon Hongyan, while the latter was the frost giant dragon summoned by Lin Chia through dimensional calling. These two dragons flew simultaneously beneath the deep red sky. Fire and ice dyed the sky into hot and cold extremes. Two thunderous dragon roars echoed among the black mass of demons, and the majestic dragon aura instantly attracted the attention of all demons. After Hongyan and the frost giant dragon spewed several breaths above the black clouds, they flew in completely opposite directions. The demons circling above the blood pool were on high alert and immediately dispatched half of the black-winged demons to kill the two giant dragons. Not enough yet. Lin Chia stared at the number of demons remaining in the sky and muttered. As his mental energy rapidly depleted, dense magic arrays opened in the sky. Snow Woman, Gray Sparrow, Wangkai and other attendants skilled in speed emerged one after another, each drawing away a wave of demons toward directions away from the blood pool. Especially Wangkai, this tailcoat-wearing pug just wiggled its butt at the black clouds, and immediately 800 or 900 demons rushed out. Those pairs of blood-colored insect eyes stared at it ferociously, as if wanting to tear it to pieces. By the time Lin Chia had summoned all the attendants capable of luring away demons, his face had begun to turn pale. At this point, dozens of demons still remained in the sky. It seemed these were the core squad guarding the blood pool. No matter who came to tempt them, they could not be tricked away. We don't have much time. Let's charge through. A fierce look flashed in Lin Chia's eyes as his figure transformed into a black lightning bolt. And Qingjiu and the others had been waiting for this moment and followed closely behind. A distance of 1 kilometer was almost nothing for Lin Chia and his team. The only problem was that there were still large numbers of flesh ball souls queuing to enter the pool at its edge, like a wall of flesh blocking their path. Lin Chia gripped the Kusanagi sword in reverse and threw it spinning. A flash of golden light passed through, and with the blessing of miracle, the sword coincidentally traced a long arc, slicing through the bodies of 4 souls in one go, forcibly cutting open a gap. For shadows rushed past the flesh ball souls. And Qingji stepped forward, treading on the surging surface of the blood pool, instantly laying down a path of frost leading directly to the black crystal floating in the center of the pool. At the same time, the dozens of demons circling in the sky also noticed Lin Chia and the others' intentions. Their black wings beat rapidly as they dove toward them. Lin Chia, charging at the front, fixed his eyes on the increasingly close black crystal and shouted, "Hold them off!" Shin Qingzhu and Qingjiu and Jiang Er leaped into the air, protecting Lin Chia as he advanced straight ahead, directly colliding with those dozens of demons. The attendants could only draw away the large-scale demon forces for a limited time. Once fighting broke out at the Hell Origin, those demons that had been lured away would quickly realize something was wrong, abandon their pursuit of the attendants and rapidly return to defend this place. For Lin Chia, not a single second could be wasted and he absolutely could not be held up by those demons. His target was only that black crystal. And Qingji took out a skull from his pocket and frantically poured mental energy into it. A crimson light emanated from the eye sockets of the skull, and then that half of a bright red tongue began to tremble. A faint song drifted out from the skull. Shin Qingzhu raised his hand and snapped his fingers. The song was then condensed by compressed air, amplified countless times, and surged toward the demons flying from the sky. The elegy. This most dangerous forbidden item of the Bailey family, and Qingyu had only taken it out a few times. On one hand, it was because Shin Qingzhu wasn't always by his side to contain the air and prevent accidental harm, and on the other hand it was because this forbidden item could only demonstrate its true power when facing massive numbers of enemies. As the elegy spread out, the demons diving from the front began to gradually turn to sand, and even the black wings behind them became riddled with holes. With the loss of their wing movements, the demon's flight speed noticeably decreased, and it was this brief delay that allowed Lin Chia to rapidly flash past the blockade line above the blood pool. The fierce winds swirling around his body lifted the blood-colored pool water on both sides, and that deep red figure passed through the water curtain, landing on the ice surface in front of the black crystal. In Lin Chia's eyes, the reflection of the black crystal appeared clearly. This black crystal was about the size of a fist, with what seemed to be tiny cracks around its edges, as if it had been broken off from somewhere. Dark currents of pure darkness flowed around the crystal, yet its core was as transparent as glass, making it impossible to look away once seen. But at this moment Lin Chia had no intention of admiring it. His eyes burst forth with dazzling golden light, his right hand raised high, and an extreme darkness flowed from Lin Chia's heart to his palm, condensing into a black sphere. The moment this black sphere appeared, the night spread from Lin Chia like a tide, instantly permeating half of the blood pool, and even the deep red sky visibly darkened at an alarming rate. In this moment, it was as if all the darkness of the world had been concentrated in Lin Chia's palm. This was the first time Lin Chia had forced the night origin out of his body because doing so was extremely dangerous. First, the aura of the night origin could easily attract the covetousness of other deities, and second, because branches of Lin Chia's night abilities had already grown from this origin. If the origin were damaged, all his extended abilities including night flash, night sky descent, and star-splitting technique would disappear. But now Lin Chia couldn't worry about all that. He gripped the night origin in his palm, a ruthless glint flashing in his eyes, and slammed it hard against the black crystal. Clang! The instant the night origin collided with the hell origin, a tremendous sound rang out. The entire blood pool erupted like a fountain rising several meters high. The demons in the sky and in Qingyu's group were all thrown back nearly 100 meters, almost plunging headfirst into the blood pool. Lin Chia, being closest to the point of collision, directly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and fell into the blood pool like a kite with cut strings. Just as his body was about to touch the blood pool, Lin Chia, enduring the excruciating pain, transformed into a streak of darkness and disappeared from his original position. The next moment he flashed back beside the black crystal. Lin Chia wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth, his face extremely pale. Ignoring the tearing pain in his mind, he fixed his gaze on the surface of the black crystal. After the collision of the two origins, there was no damage to the black crystal's surface, not even a scratch, and the black sphere in Lin Chia's palm remained similarly unaffected. Was the force not enough? Lin Chia gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and raised the night origin in his hand once more. With strength to uproot mountains and spirit to cover the world, Lin Chia shouted loudly, slamming down the night origin in his hand again. Clang! A storm more terrifying than before swept through, directly blasting Lin Chia's body outside the blood pool. Similarly blown away were the demons in the sky and in Qingyu's group. As the two origins pressed against each other, repelling one another, a terrifying blood-colored vortex formed beneath the black crystal. Lin Chia staggered to his feet, his right arm already broken. Dizzy and disoriented, he looked into the distance to see the dark mass of the demon army returning to the skies above the hell core, flying toward them with menacing force. Lin Chia's eyes were bloodshot as he clenched the night origin in his hand. With a reluctant roar, he used his last bit of strength to charge forward once more. Clang! The third thunderous collision sounded, and this time Lin Chia's body fell like mud, dropping toward the churning blood vortex below. At that moment, invisible threads caught Lin Chia's waist, forcibly lifting him from the surface of the blood pool and placing him on an air platform in midair. Chia! Chia! And Qingyu called out anxiously. Lin Chia's confused consciousness was pulled back to reality by the calls. He gritted his teeth and shook his dizzy head, only to discover that blood was flowing from all 7 orifices of his face. As if remembering something, he turned to look at the blood pool below, where the black crystal was still floating undamaged in the pool water. The collision had not affected it in the slightest. Similarly, the night origin in Lin Chia's palm showed no change. This method won't work, and Qingyu, knowing what Lin Chia was thinking, shook his head and said, "I just saw it. Your night origin couldn't fully contact the hell origin. There seems to be a natural repulsive force between them. No matter how hard you try, they can't touch each other. Perhaps only a divine system origin can destroy another divine system origin. Hearing these words, Lin Chia's pale face froze slightly, then showed an indescribable disappointment and unwillingness. Having failed to destroy the hell origin and completely exposed themselves to the demon's gaze, what awaited them was the encirclement of thousands of infinite to Klein-level demons, and even the corpse of a seraph comparable to a major deity ready to annihilate them. Not just the 4 humans, even if a deity were here there would be no chance of survival. They had lost their gamble, lost completely. As Lin Chia remained silent, Shen Qingzhu, standing on the air platform, slowly stood up. He glanced at the countless demons diving from the sky, then lowered his head to light a cigarette, placing it between his lips and taking a deep drag. Clang! This deep red figure, exhaling smoke, calmly drew the straight blade from his waist. His gaze was as sharp as the blade's gleam. "Give the order, Captain," Shen Qingzhu said calmly. "Let these monsters see who the real madman is." A beast driven to the edge like a deranged lunatic is always the enemy's nightmare. And Nightfall was fiercer than beasts, more terrifying than lunatics. Lin Chia opened his mouth, seeming to want to say something, yet unable to utter a word. "We never had a way out anyway, did we?" Shen Qingzhu looked into Lin Chia's eyes. "Dying in battle is the best ending for a special squad. Now is the time for us to establish our final merit, though this time, there will be no witnesses to our achievement." Lin Chia's gaze swept over Qingyu, Shen Qingzhu and Jiang Er in turn. After a moment of silence, he smiled self-mockingly and pushed himself up to stand. "So in the end we've come to this. So be it. At least this way of dying is much better than being pathetically trapped to death in a cave."